Calling all gamers and horror movie fans, you're about to find out how Five Nights at Freddy's is gonna save Hollywood. I know what you might be thinking, that teddy bear movie, but hear me out. Five Nights at Freddy's might be more important to cinema than you realize. It represents a major turning point in how Hollywood adapts fandom-driven IP, how Gen Z horror reshapes box office economics, and how internet-born mythology can fuel mainstream success without the traditional star power method or critical approval, which we all know the first Five Nights at Freddy's movie did not get. Stick with me because in this video we're going to dive deep into Five Nights at Freddy's as a franchise. I'm recording this a few days before the second film comes out, so it remains to be seen if that one will be as successful. Odds are looking favorable. Let's talk about the impact that this film franchise could have on Hollywood and what that means to you as a horror fan, as a gamer, as a cinema lover in general. But by the way, welcome to the party, pal. You're feeling it with Master Chaos here. I hope you're well.
Hail to the king, baby.
A quick perusal of the Rotten Tomatoes page will give you a quick barometer as to what the critics thought of the first film. And to be honest, I didn't love the first movie.
Come on now, dawg.
My son, 10 years old, loved it. My daughter, she loved it as well. However, I was not a big fan. It didn't make much of an impact on me. But the more I thought about it, and with the success of obviously it blowing up beyond people's reviews, I started to piece something together that I thought was quite interesting. And hopefully you find it as interesting as I.
Let's go.
So how did a mid-budget horror film based on a cult indie game become such a cultural event? The power of the internet, plain and simple. This was not born a franchise, this was born a fandom. And while I know Five Nights at Freddy's is not the first video game adaptation ever made, it's the first one that was fueled by intense fan interests. Let's play culture, game theory videos, fan art and lore speculation, TikTok horror culture. It was all over the place, just around this game, featuring you as a security guard taking care of some animatronics. Now, when Hollywood adapts IP that's intellectual property, for those not in the know, they usually target books, comic books, things like that, but Five Nights proved that you can grow an IP from an entirely digital culture. Because of Five Nights, studios are now taking online creator-driven intellectual property seriously for the first time when it comes to developing IPs. ARGs, indie developers, all those guys are now in the win category thanks to this movie. Now, my favorite reason as to why Five Nights at Freddy's is successful is coming up next. But this one, I think, is just as important because this touches on Gen Z. This is the core audience for Five Nights at Freddy's.
With a little help from Gen Alpha as well.
You know, there was a time when horror was elevated and, you know, slow and plotting. I was never a fan. I'm a child of the 80s. I know I look youthful. And I grew up when movies were fun. And Gen Z is right there with me. They like fun, scary, as opposed to traumatizing. And that's really what Five Nights at Freddy's is, despite the fact that it's about kidnapped children, ghosts, and stuff. They want to have fun with their horror movies. They want lore, they want puzzles, they want mysteries, they want to decode, they want to see secret meanings. All that stuff adds layers to their entertainment. They don't just want to be terrified, they want to be immersed. And that is a plus when it comes to not only storytelling, but horror in general. FNAF ultimately is the first horror movie catered directly toward the Gen Z audience. Look, there's a new model for horror in Hollywood, and this movie clearly indicates that that's not necessarily a bad thing, as I'll illustrate in my third point, which, by the way, is my favorite. Like I mentioned before, I'm a child of the 80s, and I grew up in a time of practical effects, which is a thing that has been melting away slowly in Hollywood, replaced by the worst CG you can imagine. Now, CG has its place. I'm not completely against it, but I'm a fan of practical effects myself. And if you're enjoying what you're seeing, do me a favor and slam the thumbs up and subscribe if you're new here so you and I can chat movies again soon. So how does FNAF play into this? Well, FNAF brought back the animatronic. Now, that doesn't mean that other movies had not done animatronic puppets and puppetry and, you know, all those kind of things. But this movie made practical effects cool again, necessary again. Honestly, if this was made in the early 2000s, it would look like junk and would not have worked to the degree that the fans responded to it. I mean, it's changing the game in terms of revitalizing what I love the most about the 80s. Thanks to Blumhouse, director Emma Tammy, and Jim Henson, this franchise brought back practical monster effects in a mainstream horror context. And that alone makes it important to cinema.
Nice.
Okay, so you're saying MC, but what does that matter if Five Nights at Freddy's uses practical effects? The thing is, it's going to make financial sense to a studio, and they're going to greenlight more practical creature effects because they know that an audience will trust what they can feel. And that tactile quality is really what was missing in horror, in my opinion. At the end of the day, you win as a Freddy fan, as a cinema goer. It's a win-win situation for everybody. Now, the first FNAF did something quite interesting that was a little outside the box. It released day and date to streaming and in theaters. At the time, most people thought it was because either Universal or Blumhouse didn't think the film would be successful and they were trying to leverage their assets. At a budget of only $20 million, the film came in at $291,589,416. That's a lot of scratch, and not only did it beat out the Marvels, it did it while also being on streaming. Number one, it proved that a theatrical horror film can coexist with a streaming debut at the same time. Number two, it proved that online fandom IP can outperform legacy franchises like Marvel. Of course, it was going up against the Marvels, which wasn't the best Marvel movie ever made, but you get my meaning. Number three, it proves that mid-budget movies are still around. They still exist. They can still perform like blockbusters. If handled correctly, Scott Cawthon, the creator of the video games, is heavily involved in the writing of both of these films. That is crucial. Simply Hollywood learned that fans want the original creator's voice intact. Clearly, it's going to lead to more creator-led adaptations. Case in point, Minecraft, which made almost $1 billion. I was a big fan. I really enjoyed the film, and I think it was true to the spirit of the games because the people who made the games were involved. Five Nights made it clear that audiences want the original creator inextricably linked to the film franchises going forward. I mean, we've seen what happened to stuff like Resident Evil, the original Super Mario. Let's not talk about that. We could talk about hyping the video if you haven't already. That helps the channel, it helps the video, it helps your old pal Master Chaos. I do appreciate you watching. It means the world to me. So in the end, will the Five Nights at Freddy's gang win an Oscar? Probably not. That might have been a little bit of hyperbolic ideation on my part, but I do think it's changing the Hollywood horror landscape in a very important way. Now let's be real here. FNAF did not reinvent cinema in any way, but what it did do, it reinvented how movies are made, marketed, and aimed at a generation raised on the internet instead of studios. That's a crucial distinction I'd like to make. The FNAF movies, whether you like them or not, have opened the floodgates to new creators, new voices, and that alone is worth its weight in gold. And the studios have seen that because it's financially viable. And on the plus side, we get practical effects, so yay! So let's see if Five Nights at Freddy's 2 can keep the train rolling. Right now, the film is tracking at $50 to $65 million, which is way under from the $80 million opening from the first movie. That is, of course, an underestimate. They didn't really expect the first movie to obviously perform to nearly $80 million on opening weekend, so we may be surprised if Five Nights at Freddy's 2 opens at $100 million or even at the $78-80 million range. It's a success. It's a winner-winner chicken dinner. Yeah, boy. Unless it's a franchise killer like Megan 2 or Black Phone 2, in which case it's pooed to bed.
No! God, please, no! No! No!
I do hope there will be more. I know my son is excited to see the franchise continue, as you may as well. And we know we're getting a lot more online video game movies coming down the line. I think in the next few years, there's a Bendy movie coming. We're getting a Backrooms movie. That's, yeah, neither here. We'll talk about Backrooms one of these days when we get closer to the release of that film and how that all came together, which has its own mysterious elements, especially the filmmaker involved. But it speaks to my point of getting the original creator involved with these adaptations, which can only benefit the product at the end of the day. Well, that'll do, pal. I hope this video has found you well and you're seeing the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise a little differently. I love having these little chats with you, and I appreciate you stopping by and hanging out with me. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the first Five Nights at Freddy's movie. The second one's coming out in a matter of days as of the release of this video. So let me know what you thought of part 2 down below. I'm not going to do a traditional review, but I may touch on it in a future video or live stream. Let me know what your favorite Five Nights at Freddy's character is. Mine is Freddy, but I also love me some cupcake because, well, it's delicious. Yeah, boy. Until we meet again, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you at the movies.